for this first project. It's 10 buildings, including this one, and there's a range of sizes. And again, this was actually quite important because there's always a rush to do these big flagship projects. Let's do this one because this is great. And the little library, we'll leave that one. It's too small, and then it will never happen. But it's because it's only got some lighting and maybe one air conditioner in there as well. But you bring that into the portfolio, and actually the marginal costs of adding that additional project are quite small. But it means it happened, and so you blend these projects with different buildings, different technologies. Oh, and again, we're not just talking energy efficiency, we're talking embedded generation as well, because that's all, we're looking at the demand side reductions on the buildings. So the capex is, according to the RFI, is roughly between 30 and 40 million rand. Payback is around 5 years as well. So those things will be finalised after the RFI as well. So the RFI has gone out, and I understand there's been quite a lot of interest from that as well. And again, we don't want to do just one project and then walk away. So we want to help with this first 10 buildings. What's next? Is it another 10 buildings or 20 buildings? And again, one of the discussions we've had is, do we then scale this thing up and say, now, okay, we want to do a 60 million rand project? Or this process works. Let's see if we can do 3 20 million rand projects, which will allow more smaller ESCOs to get involved. So those are the discussions to be had. If we go so large, we actually cut out a lot of the smaller ESCOs that are not able to raise the equity for those large projects. So those are the discussions going forward. So there's more building bundles, wastewater treatment, and street lighting as well. There are a lot of street lights as well, and there's only a small portion have been upgraded so far. And if we wait for EDSM money or tapping into the fiscus now and again, it could take us the next 10 to 20 years to actually get those in place. We need to make those savings as soon as possible so we actually take advantage of those opportunities. So yeah, it's a bit of a rapid presentation. As I said, I've combined 3 presentations into one from the DMRE and from my colleagues as well. But it's just to give you an oversight into this energy efficiency in public buildings program. It's a great opportunity. It's not going to be easy to get these projects off the ground, but once we've got some up and running, then it's going to be a catalyst. We'll be able to leverage a lot more. And the first ones won't be easy. We will have made some mistakes, definitely, but it'll make it easier for the projects that follow. And it's great to be working with the team at eThekwini on this first project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. So ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan's given us a lot of food for thought and a lot of critical issues that in terms of the energy space. But one critical thing is that Jonathan works very closely with SPOO in the energy office. So I know that's a bit of an information overload, but I think if you unpack it, it's stuff that all of you need to be part of, participate in, and be potential beneficiaries of this moving forward. So please make use of the office of Mr. SPOO Charlie, who's going to be our next speaker. And I think Jonathan is here for the day with us. So if there's any further clarification you need, you can sit next to Jonathan at lunch, or you can take his card and make use of his good office to pursue these requests for information. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to call up my colleague, SPOO Charlie. He's from the energy office, he's a senior manager there, and he's going to give us a really useful update on where we are with our independent power producing plan. In particular, he'll be talking to us about the energy infrastructure investment projects in the procurement pipeline here in the city. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Program Director Umukongi waseThekwini. Ngiphinde ngibingelele i-political leadership esinayo namhlanje la ICC. So umsebenzi wami today is just to give you an overview with regards to our municipal independent power producer procurement program. If you can please load my presentation. I'm not sure whether not yet. Okay. While we're still waiting for the IT to fix, Yeah, thank you for that. Maybe while we're still waiting for the presentation, and I would like to thank our strategic partners, Education Development Trust, whom we have signed the Memorandum of Understanding today in terms of training for unemployed youth in the eThekwini municipality. And what you will probably hear from this presentation is a pipeline of projects that we have in the municipality. And I think one of the principles of our energy transition policy that we adopted in 2021 was to procure a new generation capacity from independent power producers. And those independent power producers are not necessarily, as per CEO Wagasita Umpo has already alluded, that it is not about transitioning from coal power electricity towards renewables, but it's about shifting the entire carbon intensive economy towards the low carbon economy. So I'm going to show you the context of this presentation. As you can see that I'm going to just talk about the strategic direction of an organization in terms of what is it that we're doing as a Thekwini municipality, and I'll give you the overview in terms of how are we planning to boost the energy security as well as the supply value chain. And we'll talk about understanding our energy infrastructure composition in the Thekwini municipality. Please note that when we talk energy infrastructure composition, we're doing this within the context of the Thekwini municipality. So it's not a copy and paste from another municipality. When you see City of Joburg doing some energy infrastructure project, it's not going to be like a simple copy and paste because the Thekwini has got its own unique environmental conditions as well. So we will talk about the key infrastructure projects. So I will try and move you towards the actual projects that we are going to procure as a city. So I know that quite often when we talk about this development, most of the officials, we get locked in terms of developing plans, strategies and policies, and sometimes those policies and strategies, they never materialized. And as a result of that, these kind of projects are actually in the pipeline. We're talking about something that will be rolled out into the future, and you'll get to hear the timeline. And earlier on, you see in the next slide, you see the commitments that we have made through our energy transition policy, of which is a policy of the municipality that regulates the energy infrastructure in the Thekwini municipality. And what we have said, we have a short-term strategic commitment, which then looks at 2025 and 2026. And what we have said, we want to reduce our reliance on the national grid. And there are quite a number of reasons why are we doing that. Part of it is load shedding. And another reason is around the price of electricity, which has been escalating far above the inflation. We all know that if the inflation in the country is around 5% or so, but if you look at the cost of electricity from year to year, you see that the pricing is around the double digit, 10% and above, 15% and so on. And what we're saying is that the plan is around the timelines. We will procure these 400 megawatts that should come online in 2025 and 2026. And it goes back to the point before that we were discussing about the exit strategy. If we train the youth, where are they going to be working in the future? So that's what we are trying to build, because one of the fundamental responsibilities of the local government is to create an enabling environment, is to create the demand so that we can be able to attract investment and hence create more job opportunities for our youth. And in a medium-term strategic commitments, we will further reduce our reliance on the national grid by 40%, of which that talks to the procurement of 1,000 megawatts of new generation capacity, and of which we believe that will be connected and synchronized into the grid in the 2030 and 2031 financial year. And ultimately, in the long term, we said we want to achieve our energy independence and be self-sufficient as a city of a Thekwini municipality, meaning that we will add another 1,600 megawatts of new generation capacity in the year 2035 and 36 financial year. So what you see here is an overall new procurement generation capacity of about 3,000 megawatts that we will procure from independent power producers. And there is a clear timelines in terms of how are we going to do that and when are we going to do it. Because that is a commitment, it's not a promise, it's a commitment that we have set as a council of eThekwini. But what we're saying is that it cannot be the transition that will leave our people behind. And that is why we say now, let's start with the youth The youth has to be in the center of our transformation, and the youth has to be in the center of our leadership as well. And that is why we say 3 important pillars for us is around achieving the least cost of electricity, meaning getting affordable electricity to our residents, the commercial sector, as well as the industry at large. And what we're saying, we will support other alternative mechanism, whether you talk about wheeling structures, and we will support that as a eThekwini municipality, but provided that those wheeling structures demonstrate win-win capabilities. You know, what you see now, we don't want to have a situation where eThekwini will retrench some of the employees because the revenue is declining. So we used to sell 1,800 megawatts, now the city is selling roughly 900 megawatts, so the revenue declines, and the electricity department have no revenue at all. And now it forces the city to retrench. So when it comes to wheeling frameworks and structures that we will have, it must demonstrate a win-win capability where the producer must win, the operator of the grid, which is eThekwini, must win, as well as the consumer of that electricity must be able to win. And we will invest in the commercially proven technologies. We're not saying don't come with coal power or don't come with new technologies, but we want to demonstrate, to show us that your business case is bankable. Show us that your feasibility study is something that can be truly achievable from the economic perspective, from a legal perspective, from the finance perspective, and from economic development perspective, because we still have BEE as part of our key catalyst, you know, in our procurement plans as a city going forward. And quite often when we talk about the investment generally, we say, let's just look at the supply side of things, and we forgot about the demand side of things. And that is why we say transmission and distribution infrastructure, which is run by our electricity department, would be very important in order to integrate all this new generation capacity into the grid. There won't be any IPP in the eThekwini without the grid. And that is why, working together with our electricity unit, we have now started the journey of identifying the major transmission substations that could be utilized or can be utilized in order to integrate new generation capacity. While we talk about the transition, we have said we should not leave our people behind, but at the center of it is around promoting localization and reindustrialization. And what you see happening in the south of Durban as an example is a perfect example of deindustrialization. So you have refineries that are not operational, and you have pulp and paper companies that are not operational, and that on its own is the biggest barrier to the revenue of this municipality. So we need to be working together towards reindustrializing our economy as a eThekwini municipality going forward. But we also need to promote green industries going forward. It's not about just importing the electric vehicle, it's not about just importing the solar panels, but we need to have more manufacturers of solar panels located in this city. 92% of today solar panel production comes from China, and it's distributed across the world. And that on its own is the biggest problem that we are facing in the world, not just in the city, in the world. We need more manufacturers of solar PVs in this country. Just to tell you the scenario that we are facing as a country, we have only one manufacturer of solar PV in South Africa, one. And it's here in Pinetown, Outsol. I'm not sure whether they are here. They have been invited to attend this forum today. That's just one manufacturer that you have in South Africa for solar PV, you know, and that the production line of that manufacturing company is around 325 megawatts annually. Now you tell me, what is the demand for solar power in South Africa? Far exceeded that. That's why now all these solar panels are being imported into the country. And if we are failing to boost our local manufacturing capabilities, we will have a problem. And that is why we need to reindustrialize, you know, as South Africa and as a eThekwini municipality. And let's not forget about having the social integration in all this development. And I feel sorry for IPPs that wants to participate in the eThekwini because we will insert some very strong bylaws in our procurement plan. And if you don't have any plan in terms of how are you planning to develop a nearby community, you will have some tough times to compete in our IPP program. And that is why we say the BEE is still very much in the center of our transformation. So whether you look BEE from the perspective of local economy, whether you look BEE from the perspective of ownership, management control, social enterprise and enterprise development and so on. So all those pillars will be included in our BEE scoring criteria. But at the same time, the gender mainstreaming also will be in this. We want more women to participate in the energy sector. It cannot be just a field for few individuals or few companies, which happens to be foreign companies in most cases. It must be shared across the small emerging companies in the TechWin. And that is why we also have a view of saying maybe we need to have a specific procurement for small emerging companies, because really if we just have one big procurement and the SMEs, there's no chance that they can win any bid when they are competing with the big boys. You know, that's one of the challenges that we are facing. We need to transform our procurement processes going forward and have a smart procurement process as a city. And I'm happy that we are working very much close with World Bank and DBA to address exactly that, because we have to level the field and ensure that the small emerging companies are also participating. As I've said, that the focus is not only on the supply side, but we also want to have some interventions on the demand side. And I'm happy that our energy efficiency branch is working very hard with the Department of Mineral Resources around the demand side management. I think my colleague Jonathan was speaking about the EPIP program, which is we are participating there. The Department of Public Works and Infrastructure also participate in that program as well. And we will be rolling out all these kind of interventions, not only on the municipal-owned infrastructure, but on the infrastructure that is owned by the private sector as well, because we want to be transformational, but at the same time, we don't want to leave some people behind. And in terms of the procurement of new generation capacity, and one of the principles of our energy transition policy is not to favor or disfavor any kind of technology. We just have to remain objective in terms of what is it that we want to achieve. And as a result of that, we will procure from still coal power. We will procure from the gas generation projects. We will procure from nuclear power, and we will procure from renewable energy, because one of the principles is that you don't want to have a single source of power supply. We cannot place all our eggs in one basket, in simple terms, because that is a big danger on our side. And we need to ensure that we also transition towards the public transport, because transport becomes a very big industry in terms of the contribution to the greenhouse gas emissions. And therefore, the transition cannot just look in the electric power production, but we must also look at the transport side. How do we fix the port? How do we incentivize the trucks that are moving from along N3 to the Durban, Gauteng, KZN corridor? That will be the specific focus for eThekwini municipality. So we will help and work together with our transport department in terms of diversifying the transport fuels. Some transition will talk to electric vehicles, and some transition will talk towards hydrogen economy or green hydrogen economy in simple terms, and we'll also talk to biofuels as well. Those are the opportunities that are available, and we must make use of all our energy resources that we have in the eThekwini municipality in order to create more job opportunities. Of course, when we do it, we need to do it in an environmental and sustainable manner, and also social and governance practices. So what you see in the next slide is an energy mix in terms of our generation expansion plan. As I've said, that we are not only focusing on one technology. We are focusing on the multiple technology and resources that we have in this province. So these are the bid windows. They call it as a bid windows at national. We call it the batches here in the eThekwini. So we have got about 7 batches that will be rolling out into the future. The first batch that we're talking about, I think the mayor was talking about, is around 400 megawatts of new generation capacity, which is our short-term strategic commitment in the eThekwini. We will procure 300 megawatts of gas power. And we'll also procure 100 megawatts of solar power. And on the other side, you see the deployment of new generation capacity from various sources of power. We have got hydropower contributing 2% in our energy mix, and we have got the waste to energy contributing also roughly 2% in our energy mix. We want to address, Eric, this issue of landfills that are now quite close to their operating lifestyle, maximum capacity, operating at maximum capacity. And that is a big issue that is also faced by Belfast Dry Landfill. And we want to ensure that we divert all the waste that goes to landfill, and that waste should now go to our waste-to-energy facilities. And that is why you see that the waste-to-energy contributes about 2% in our energy mix. And we have a biomass. Obviously, you cannot dispute that in the province of KZN, you have got sugar cane spread across the province. And how are we going to make use of that sugar cane to generate electricity? And I'm happy that today we were at Sugarla Training Center. So those are the issues that we should be able to talk about in order to revive the economy and to revive the sugar industry at large. And we've got solar panels. Yes, KZN may not be the best province when it comes to solar panel, and that is why the country, the southern cluster in particular, and that is your Eastern Cape, Western Cape, and Northern Cape. That's where you see a lot of solar panel development. But unfortunately, the grid there has reached the saturation point, and now this kind of development are starting to move towards the central cluster, which is your northwestern Free State. And ultimately, the grid will reach the saturation point there in the central cluster, and then it will move to the northern cluster, which is your Gauteng, KZN, Limpopo, and Mpumalanga. So this is a transition that you will see as time goes by. But the energy mix also talks to coal power. We cannot dispute the fact that KZN still remains has got coal reserves, anthracite in particular, across the Africa. If you look at the coal reserves, in particular anthracite in the province of KwaZulu-Natal is located here. And when you are preparing to do away with coal, and then is a big problem in terms of energy security, but it's a big problem in terms of job issues as well. So that is why we say we must focus on playing the ball, not the man. And that is why we say for coal projects, we will integrate with carbon capture technologies, whether you talk about direct air capture technologies, whether you talk about capturing carbon emission, but use those carbon emissions in order to generate other value-add product, whether you use carbon dioxide, mix it with hydrogen, and then produce methanol. There's one big project, Eric, that we are working on. It's around a perfect example that we have in the Tegwini municipality. Natural gas will play a very important role in the Tegwini municipality. I'm sure that most of you might have heard that the Transnet has already announced the winning bidder in as far as the Richards Bay LNG import terminal is concerned, and we hope that the LNG import terminal will be operational in 2027, and that will also help Tegwini in terms of the development of gas to power plant. Nuclear power plant is part of our plan. We're looking at around 1 gigawatts in total, but that's more like a long-term plan from a Tegwini side. If you look at all the batches that we'll be procuring to the future, so the nuclear power plant will fall under batch number 7, where we'll procure roughly about 940 megawatts. So what you see now, these are the projects that low-hanging fruit project in simple terms, that we will be releasing into the market in the new financial year. So the financial year, for those that may not understand, is when we say financial year 2024, 2025, so we actually mean from 1 July 2024 to 1 July 2025. So in between there, you should be able to see this kind of request for proposal issued into the market. We start with the turnaround of Ushaga Marine. There are quite a number of issues there, but we want to make sure that facility operates off the grid in the future, and that is why we are investing 5.5 megawatts of new generation capacity there, which will be solar, as well as battery storage there, and we have invested 100 million rand there, and that should actually create about 200 job opportunities at Ushaga Marine. But Mayor spoke about the wastewater treatment plants. We are also planning to put some solar PV there together with biogas, because we deal with sludge production there. And during that sludge production, you get the biogas. And that biogas can then be utilized in order to produce electricity. But the purpose of deploying all these assets in our wastewater treatment plants is to ensure that we generate electricity for own use in those wastewater treatment plants. So we are targeting Guamashu. We'll be investing 400 million rand, and that tender will be released again in 2024-2025 financial year. But going to southern wastewater treatment plants, we are investing 250 million rand, and that plant is around 225 million rand, and that tender will be released in 2024, 2025, and it will create quite a number of job opportunities as well. Talking about the public transport issue, the mayor spoke about the rollout of EV infrastructure across the city. I mean, it's a project that we will, but the beginning phase will be at Mtuzuma. We want to roll out the EV charging infrastructure. And I know that most of you might have heard that eThekwini has already received the budget to procure 19 electric buses. We're working together with the likes of DBSA, our transport department, electricity. We have a whole lot of project steering committee that is looking specifically at that particular project. And we are very much happy that the project has indeed reached that financial close. But we're looking at obviously releasing that particular tender around 2024, 2025. So you can see that in the next financial year, obviously there will be a lot and lot of Ps that we will be releasing into the market. And lastly, we have got a program that we have in the Buffelsdrive. It's called a IWEC. We call it IWEC. It's an integrated waste-to-energy complex. It's not just waste-to-energy, but it's a waste-to-energy complex. So what is it that we are trying to achieve there? It's three components. First of all, there will be a solar farm. A solar farm will fit directly into the grid. A second component, there will be green hydrogen, which will be produced from seawater, and that hydrogen will be stored and be released during peak period in order to support the grid. And the last component will be waste to energy. So we are focusing on three important aspects, and that is why we are calling it, it's a complex. You know, so we are very much at work in terms of ensuring that these kind of projects are all going to be released in the new financial. It's a very big project, I must say, and that is why it's a 5 billion rand project, of which calls for all stakeholders that will be affected. But the RFP, we can reassure that it will be released in the new financial. Gas to power, as well as 300 megawatts of, 100 megawatts of solar PV and 300 megawatts of gas to power. So that 400 megawatts, the mayor often mentioned 400 megawatts. There are three different contracts that are included in that 400. The first contract is around gas importation contract. Where do you get the gas? How do you land the gas in Durban Port? And who takes that gas for the production of electricity? The second contract is around now actual building the gas. Well, and often that does not have any gas. But we hope that whatever development that are happening in the Western Corridor, in the Western Cape, in terms of finding new gas, will then use some positive fruits in future. But in terms of what is that we want to achieve is that the gas that should be imported into 21 petajoules of gas molecules, which is roughly equivalent to about 21 million gigajoules. Durban Basin. So hence, the gas to power plant will be positioned in the South Durban Basin. So it will be obviously working together with the likes of Transnet. We have tested the business case around it. How do we land gas to Durban? But we're also looking at what is happening in Richards Bay as well, because we don't want to be seen as if we're operating laws. You know, we want to work with all the districts in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. And that is why we'll be eyeing that Richards Bay LNG import terminal, of which it will then be integrated into a Transnet Lily pipeline. But in terms of now surveying the landscape of eThekwini, we have just recently appointed the consultant that will then be doing the work in terms of, shortlisting the possible sites in the eThekwini that are suitable for the development of power generation. So when you talk to gas, when you talk to solar PV, so there must be some site that must be shortlisted in order to ensure that we begin the process of construction and so on. So the consultant has been appointed to do exactly that, but also to look at our substations that we have, how much evacuation capacity that is available in those substations, and where will that power be consumed, and so on and so forth. Because without a grid, there will be no IPP program in the eThekwini. But we also look at the gas-to-power plant itself, and that will also be located in the south of Durban. As you can see that we're talking about 300 megawatts. It's got a potential to offset 3 stages of load shedding in the eThekwini municipality, and that will also create around 5,000 job opportunities during construction. So, Mpho, when you talk about the youth that does not have an exit strategy, so these are the opportunities that we'll be looking at in terms of creating an enabling environment for the youth to have sustainable exit strategy after the training. But in terms of now, the operations of that power plant, I must make the point that the municipality obviously does not have money. The municipality may not have the capacity, but the municipality is tasked to create an enabling environment, for the private sector to invest. And that is why we say, build 300 megawatts, we will procure electricity from you and reduce reliance on Eskom. But build it here at a Durban port. We'll procure from you over a certain period of time. Obviously, we'll sign a power purchase agreement with you. And then after that, those assets has to be brought back to the municipality, because it's not a private thing, it's a public-private partnership. At the end of the power purchase agreement, we'll then have those assets to eThekwini municipality. So those assets belongs to eThekwini municipality in simple terms. So this thing will be privately funded, operated, and maintained over a period of time. So same thing applies to solar power. We have chosen the Outer West for a specific reason in terms of why the 100 megawatts should go to the Outer West. And we understand that the terrain in KZN is hectic. And when you are deploying solar PV, ideally you should have a flat land. And that is why we are also negotiating with the team to say, maybe it will be a good strategy to break it down to 20 megawatts there, 20 megawatts there, and 20 megawatts there. But you are also killing the scales of economies by doing that. A 20 megawatts in terms of the tariff may be expensive, but a 100 megawatts in one site in terms of the tariffs may be cheaper. So we are considering all those strategic imperatives in order to make sure that we make a final decision. And of course, that solar PV plant will reduce stage 1 load shedding to eThekwini municipality. So I'm talking about the projects that is not a dream. I'm talking about the project that we will be releasing the RFP in the new financial year. We may release the RFP in this financial year, because why I'm saying that is because on the 13th of March, the Treasury BAC has now subsequently approved this particular project. So we will be getting a team of transaction advisors that will be working with us in terms of, building the procurement frameworks, different agreements that we need to have, whether legal, grid connection, and so on. And that advisory team will be comprising financial advisor, there will be a legal advisor, there will be economic development advisor, to ensure that no one is left behind. The BEE, the social integration, is in the center of our procurement process. So different spheres of government have already approved this particular project. We started with a provincial KZN, Provincial Executive Council in KZN. It was approved there, and then it was approved by KZN Treasury as well, approved by KZN AIDSA. And maybe let me make a specific point. KZN AIDSA is a very important stakeholder in this case. It's a very important stakeholder because when it comes to environmental impact assessment, so many more projects get delayed because of environmental impact assessment. And we have struck the deal with the AIDSA to say, guys, let's have the processing of EIAs be and dusted in less than 3 months. And that was actually a resolution that was taken through at the KZN Provincial Executive Council, because we don't want to delay. So this is a 10 billion rand investment, of which 7.5 billion rand will go to gas to power, and a 2.5 billion rand will go to solar PV. So if you go to the next slide, now we talk hydrogen economy, and I'm sure that most of you are familiar about our regional hydrogen strategy. And as a city in Po, we have already made some strides in terms of getting hydrogen economy up to speed. In our Energy Transformation Summit that was held last year here at ICC, we approved the first ever regional hydrogen strategy in Africa. That was approved here at ICC. And eThekwini was driving that with the UK Department of Energy, I must say, because that's where we get funding. So that regional hydrogen strategy has listed quite a number of projects in it. And one of the projects are listed, to go to the image on your right-hand side, you can see quite a number of proposed development that will be done in the eThekwini municipality. But on top of it, what we have done from the leadership point of view, we have created what we call the eThekwini Energy Transition Committee. And that committee is chaired by our Chief Strategy Officer in the eThekwini, and the sole-minded point in time, but looking at making Durban be the energy hub, for KZN and South Africa in the long term, simply because hydrogen involves the moving assets, and you have got the biggest port here in Durban. So it's your competitive advantage in a way. So how do we then turn around the port and so forth? And that is why we work together with the TNPA to say, let's work together around reviving the port and so forth. 1 September 2023, just after we have adopted that strategy, 1 September 2023, we issued out the request for information to the market under that hydrogen supply chain infrastructure program, and just to test the appetite of the industry in South Africa and in eThekwini in particular, especially the companies that are operating in a hydrogen economy. And we have received roughly about 5 proposals with regards to that. And it's understandable. Be able to regulate the hydrogen economy. We have also made life easy for investors in terms of now tracking down the demand for hydrogen in the eThekwini municipality in particular. And if you look at from the short to medium and long-term perspective, you can see that we have got a demand of about 500 kilotons of hydrogen in the eThekwini municipality. And up to 2040, the demand is increasing to about 900 kilotons of hydrogen. And then up to 2050, the demand increases to about 2050. So that demand alone tells you that from the supply chain point of view, you must build the infrastructure that will cost roughly 420 billion rand. So the regional hydrogen strategy is a 420 billion rand investment that will require in order to fulfill the demand that we have also mentioned in our regional hydrogen strategy. And we are very much happy that quite a number of companies are starting to talk to us in terms of how are we planning to roll out, what sort of support that is required, and so forth. So the deadline for our RFI was on the 2023, and we received about 5 proposals. I've already mentioned that. And the next step that we are planning to do with regards to those proposals that we received is to table the report to the council, but subject to those companies providing their feasibility study, providing their off-taker agreements as well. So we will then table the report. Council, because most of the companies requires waste from the municipality, and for us to be under the contract in terms of waste and the volumes of waste, we need to seek for a council authority for that. And for us, in order to seek that council authority or to convince me going to the council, I need to see your feasibility. I want to see who's your off-taker, because I don't want to take a project to the council and only to find that the project does not have an off-taker, the project is not bankable. So that is why we say, let's work together addressing those issues before I can go Now, in closing, this is my last slide. In terms of now talking about this project and their geographical spread across the province of KwaZulu-Natal, as you can see that, we're not saying we're limiting every infrastructure development within a eThekwini municipality. But what is very important to say is that there are resources that you will have in the eThekwini. There are resources that will be available in the King Cesar district. There are resources that will be available at Ilembe all the way to other districts, to Mzinyati or Zululand and so forth. And that is why we say it's a regional transformation. So whatever thing that is happening in eThekwini, it should spread across the province of KwaZulu-Natal. And there are quite a number of issues with regards to land in KZN. We understand that, and that is why we say let's form partnership with other municipalities in the province. We will be signing the service level agreement with those municipalities. If I have a solar farm located up there at the Ugu district, I should be signing the service level agreement with the Ugu district. But this is a laying hand in terms of ensuring that as we transition, we don't leave other municipalities behind. Whether you are the category B municipality, you are the category C municipality, we should transform all together towards the low carbon economy. So same thing applies, all the IPPs that will be located in the ESCOM area of supply. Those IPPs will be expected to get into the contract with ESCOM in terms of wheeling electricity to eThekwini municipality. And with regards to the gas supply constraint in KZN, we are working together with TNPA in order to address that. And that is why I've said that the FSRU, the repurposing of SPM behind our refineries will be critical going forward. And that is why the 300 gas to power will be located in the south of Durban. And in the first batch of our municipal independent power producer procurement program, as I've mentioned, that is something that is underway, very much advanced. It has been approved. The RFP will be released into the market either this financial year or the next financial year. And in terms of nuclear coal and some solar PV projects, that will be positioned outside a eThekwini boundary, but subject to a detailed site establishment and affordability. Because we want to really drive this regional transformation in the eThekwini municipality so that we can create job opportunities and energy security and provincial sovereignty in the future. So, colleagues, this is the end of my presentation, but I really do wish to take some of your questions, burning questions really. Please, if you can just raise your questions, I will be standing here. Thank you.
I've got it. Thank you, Eric. The question is not directly directed to SBU only, but to all the presenters. Can you get copies of your presentations, probably, if you can make available a link or some form of an access?
Yeah. I think it'll be very useful, SBU, if we find an innovative way of making sure people get the copy of the presentation, but also in a way people have a very clear understanding of the timelines when things will happen. And then the closing slide will be your contact details and Mr. Pewa. Is that okay that we get that to you as a minute of this meeting?
Yes, please.
Okay. So if you've all signed the register, we'll endeavor to make sure that everyone gets the outcomes of the meeting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll take the question of the gentleman, Mr. Gwala, and then come to Mr. Dube here in the front. Yeah, Priscilla, the gentleman with the blue shirt here, yeah, but the camera. There, he's got his hand up here. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, Mr. Gwala, please go ahead, and then Mr. Dube after you.
For me, program director, I would like to congratulate the SBO work was done, because we're coming here all the times in ICC to talk about this program. But to me, it was very helpful to see that program is running. But to see my comment to SBO, we said, maybe you can start this program sometimes to make awareness.
Sorry, Mr. Gwala, can you just bring the mic closer to your mouth?
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, my comment to SBO is saying, must take this program to campaign to our different schools, because you see we got a lot of information here in ICC, but other people didn't know what we were doing. So another thing which is very interesting for me, for that we signed a memorandum with that trust. But for me, I got one of the school in Dozoma was damaged on the flood about 20 years ago now. But what interested for the school is vandalized, but what has happened in the school is also in that 10 years is passing the rate of 100%. Maybe you can go and look at the school and educate children about that energy. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Gwala. Mr. Dube, here in the front.
Thank you very much. I'm Vanavuti Dube, CEO of Kili Energy. Two quick questions. One, maybe I fell asleep for a second there. I didn't pick up that one. I understand that for all these wonderful projects, the site selection will be taken care of by the municipality, which we appreciate as an industry. But I didn't get the part about the EIAs. Will that be the responsibility of the industry, or will it be the responsibility of the municipality? That's question one. Question two is, look, this is very exciting. It's very exciting for the industry. The future looks great. We are in full support of it as the industry. However, right, because we're talking here, it's more future-based. But Rome is burning today, right? Us who grew up in the townships, who come from the townships, informal settlements in rural areas, Rome is burning today, right? People are really impacted, highly, highly impacted with what is happening. What are the mitigation strategies that are mass-based, that are in place, also to democratize or mass democratize the clean energy in terms of how it doesn't leave anyone behind? Yes, I understand what is being said, but in terms of mass-based democratization, what are the strategies that are in place? How can we as the industry play a role? Because we've got some great ideas in terms of that across the board. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Dube. I think those are 3 questions. Sbu, then Mr. Nzimande here, Priscilla, will be the last one, and then we need to do our last input.
No, thank you. I think given my height, it's safer that I stand. So I was just saying, Mr. Gwala Lapho Mphephetwa made a comment, and I think it's about information, and in terms of sharing information as partners to the municipality. I think we just want to raise our hands. So I'll raise a hand as IX engineers to say we're quite happy to support an initiative which goes to schools to share information, and I'm sure Uguti, the director here, Mr. Ndinde, agrees with me. Uguti, sharing information, we can happily partner. There may be other partners in the house as well who would also volunteer to say, if the municipality is saying to that school, to that school, to that school, just sharing information, it opens the minds of learners and creates a pipeline of people who are eager, excited about what the future is going to look like. It's the smallest thing we can do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Priscilla, the gentleman here will be the last with the white shirt here in the front. Thanks for that, Mr. Nzimande.
Thanks. Thank you, Program Chair. Mine is specific to the hydrogen economy. Sbu. The question is, I'm Peter Mbata of Ethala Hydrogen. In this case, we're talking about the plan that Sbu presented. It was very clear and succinct on the electricity side. On the hydrogen, even though there was some information, if you can just expand a little, other than the potential market out there, but eThekwini itself, what are they looking at in terms of hydrogen, the quantities, as well as for what? That way we can also be a little bit more channeled, or in what form as well. Hydrogen can be hydrogen in itself, can also be carried as ammonia. Such a little bit of detail will help focus our strategies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mbata. Sbu, you addressed that. I think the two key questions. One is from Mr. Dube and Mr. Mbata. Those are your two key questions. I think we appreciate the input from Mr. Nzimande, and they will respond formally to the gentleman at the back about the need for information, but also getting the presentations. Mr. Sbu, you can answer from here.
Thank you very much, Eric, Program Director. Indeed, those were the very good questions, and I must say. And let me start with Mr. Kwala with regards to our role that we can play, especially in schools. And I did not want to the energy office is SEIP, SEIP, and it stands for Social Energy Infrastructure Program. It's something that we have just recently established within eThekwini municipality. And the main purpose of that SIP program really, one is to target all the schools in terms of the implementation of solar PV on their roof, because there is a huge roof space that is available in some schools as well. And secondly is to target the clinics and the hospitals as well as the townships as well. And there's another small program that is linked to that, which is called Township Energy Program. So those are the plans that we have. But in terms of, advertising, getting those plans into motion, it's something that it will take a little bit more time on our side up until we gather the information within the energy office. We process that information before we can make any intervention. But I just want to make it clear that it's something that is already in the pipeline, and there is a concept that has been developed around it in terms of what will be the role of the municipality, what will be the role of the schools, because we are of the view that we are killing our career, our kids and so on, the impact of load sharing to those schools and so on. So I do believe that we are more than happy that we can engage with you in order to take you through to what we're thinking as a municipality, what is it that we should be doing in order to help the schools and townships and so on. Because during load shedding, I believe that most people end up getting an opportunity to commit crime when the lights are not operational and so on. And that is why under that township energy economy or township energy program, we should be able to address the issue of darkness in our townships as well, and have independent high mast lights that will be implemented in our township so that they will keep operational even during the presence of load shedding. So those are the programs that we have, of which those projects will be precipitated in the future, so that it can be understood, brought by the public, and in terms of the role that will be played by the public, the schools, the municipality, the township, hospitals and clinics and so on. In terms of the question from Kili Energy, the responsibility of the environmental impact assessment, and it was a KZN Provincial Executive Council resolution that the KZN ATA is a deciding authority, especially if the project is happening at a local government. But there are exceptions that has been made where the project maybe is complex and that responsibility can be transferred to the national authority. So what we're saying is that we have already done the work for you. Appointing transactional advisors. I did mention that we have 5 teams or 5 streams of transactional advisors that we have just appointed. The first one is to deal with legal issues. The second one will deal with finance issues. The third one will deal with technical issues. The fourth one will deal with economic development issues. And the fifth one will deal with environmental issues. So therefore, that's where the EIA will then have to be done. So all the sites that we are shortlisting right now, it will be tested via the EIA. We will do EIA for you, don't worry. It's one of the creating enabling environment that we want to see project developing much more faster. And that is why they deal with the AIDSA to say, let's process those in less than 3 months, and then let's allow eThekwini to support the EIA process going forward. In terms of the mitigation strategies, this is also linked to our SIP program. Yes, it will take time, I must say, because of financial constraints that we are experiencing at this point in time. But also, we want to roll out something that will benefit people. Not that because we are now having a crisis and now we must establish something that will have to be done now. It's something that you have to be very strategic about it, assess all the risk of the particular program before you can go ahead and install it. So it is linked, Mr. Dube, towards our social energy infrastructure program as well as the township energy program. Mr. Nzimande, in terms of the sharing of information, well, we can make it available, that one, for you easily. You can also follow my LinkedIn page. I normally share each and every information, the decisions that we have taken as a council and so on. And Mr. Mbata, in terms of the hydrogen economy and the role of the municipality, we understand, and these responsibilities have not yet been clarified. When you consider the demand of hydrogen and you consider the supply of hydrogen, it is not clear who must supply, who must create the demand. But we are very much certain that as a local government, just our traditional responsibility is to create an enabling environment for the industry to strive. And that is why we say, even out of these demands that I've highlighted in my presentation, these are the demands, part of it are demands within eThekwini municipality. When you look at our bus fleets, you're looking at our DSW trucks and so forth, and then you're asking yourself, which fuel is really driving those assets and so forth. And that is why we need to diversify there. We may issue out the RFP in future, but provided that we have sustainable supply of hydrogen. Because at this point in time in South Africa, there is no company that is producing green hydrogen, to be specific. And you don't want to create a demand for that. That is why some people end up talking about chicken egg situation. So we need to ensure that when we go out on RFP, and we are certain that there is a supply of hydrogen. And in terms of the composition, what kind of hydrogen and so forth, it could be black, green, yellow, any form of hydrogen really we can talk on, because we understand that is a transition. It's not that something that we'll do today and then it ends there. It's a transition. Even the transition towards green hydrogen will take time. We may have to start with blue hydrogen and then transition over time. So at eThekwini, there is a demand for us, and please do assure us that there is a supply of hydrogen. We'll issue out the RFP to the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sbu. So Mr. Mbata, I think also it would be useful in terms of our partnership with GIZ, because GIZ has some of those international good practice ideas around hydrogen, that we could also create those links for you as a partner in Durban. And I think, Mr. Dube, I think your question is quite valid, because we are in a kind of a crisis anxiety mode about secure energy and the challenge that we face. And I think that the answer you got from Sbu is not, I think, what is perfect, but it's, and I think I understand why he's saying that, but I think as a country we need to push the urgency and to get companies to get more closer to government in a way to make sure we can get more energy security, even in the short and medium term. So colleagues, I would recommend, Mr. Dube, that you work with Sbu's office and really engage with the city manager and Mr. Pewa and the mayor to see how you and other companies can work with the city to help escalate and really ensure that our energy security needs are addressed now in a more efficient way. So, ladies and gentlemen, the last presentation, which I think you'll also find very important and interesting, before we break for lunch, I'd like to call up Mr. Naveen Badasa. He is going to talk. He's a senior manager in our high voltage planning section in the city, and he will address the issues of the state of readiness, transmission and distribution networks, power grid integration in eThekwini. So he is a planner, but he's an engineering type. He doesn't plan towns. We give him the IDP and they plan the towns, and then he's got to make sure that there's electricity. And then okay, Mr. Barasa, can we give him a round of applause, please? Yeah, that's a pointer. Forward, back. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Program Director.
You can't point it because you're going to point it, they won't see you pointing. Okay. Do you want a roving mic?
No. Thank you, Program Director. A very good afternoon to the leadership of the city, councillors, and the participants to this forum. I'm Naveen Bedesa. I'm the Senior Manager for the High Voltage Planning Branch at eThekwini Electricity. So I'll be talking to you this afternoon about the state of readiness of our transmission and distribution networks at eThekwini in readiness for IPPs or any generation in general. Okay, the first section of my presentation is on the general requirements to connect to the eThekwini network. So if we look at the existing customers, it's very simple for existing customers to export their generation to the grid. All that needs to happen is that they need to comply with the necessary legislation. So we traditionally had one-way flow of power. So the network, like to your home, would be rated, the cable would be rated to convey the power to your house to provide your power requirements. If you choose to generate at home, that cable can be used then to export whatever you generate at your home, and then the excess gets exported to the municipal network. So if one looks at a new supply point, now this way it becomes a little complicated. If it is a small-scale embedded generation, it's fairly simple, but once you go higher on capacities greater than, let's say, 1 megawatt, one needs to look at how close is the site where you want to generate in relation to the existing networks of the city. So we also look at what the generation output voltage is versus the network voltage. So we look at a project that I worked on several years ago at the port. The generation voltage was 11,000 volts, and their network at the time was 33,000 volts. So there was then a need to install step-up transformers, and this way then the costs of the projects escalate. So the trick is to make sure that you do proper planning upfront in order to minimize the cost, the overall costs on the project. And the last point on the new supply point is just to make sure that the grid is able to support the connection without causing any technical problems. So as a lessons learned, we had installed a generation plant at the landfill site in Besaisa Road. And what we found at night, when most of the commercial sites in Springfield had closed, we found that the voltage at the substation, it was Carnot substation, was rising beyond what the grid requirements were. So now in our future designs, we will make sure that we don't repeat mistakes of that nature. The other requirement is the statutory compliance, and here the onus is on the customer, the consumer, the prosumer, or generator, to prove compliance to the various legislative requirements. At eThekwini Electricity, we just play a monitoring role on behalf of NERSA and Department of Manpower and other legislative bodies of the country. So on a little more on statutory requirements, safety is regulated by the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and calling upon electrical installation regulations, which then invokes other standards such as the SANS 10142. One of the earlier speakers mentioned the importance of having your certificate of compliance. It's a must for safety reasons, human life and also in terms of insurance purposes. You've got to have the right documentation for whatever plant you choose to install. Then the grid interconnection requirements for small-scale embedded generation is covered by the NRS 097-2. And this normally looks at the generation capacity is less than 1 megawatt, which connects to either a single or a three-phase network. So if we look at generation plants in terms of capacity that lie between 5,000 kilowatts and 350 kilowatts, the generator or applicant will have to do a grid impact study to prove compliance to the applicable codes. And for generation plants in excess of 5,000 kilowatts, in addition to the grid code compliance, the applicant would have to do compliance testing and also install communication and SCADA infrastructure, and also ensure that he proves compliance in terms of quality of supply to the NRS 048-2. And then just a note on the grid impact study. Why do we do a grid impact study? It's just to assess the capability and controllability of the embedded generation plant. So you don't want to put in a plant where once it starts generating, and if you have an emergency, you will be unable then to control it. So you need to be able to control the plant. I've just put in categories of embedded generation and typical connection voltages. This is not cast in concrete. Most of our projects we will do on a case-by-case basis. So if we look at generator size up to 13.8 kilowatts, it's a category A1, connects to the LV network. And on the other extreme, it's plants that category C, which is in excess of 20 megawatts. That then would typically connect to the high voltage network. Okay, the next part I'll talk about on the presentation is connection to the low and medium voltage network. The application process for connecting to the medium voltage or low voltage network is basically through a submission of an application form. The current manual process requires some typical information one needs to supply with the application would be the full details of the generation capacity and components, the approval of the SSEG system designed by a professional engineer or professional technologist, and then finally the installation has to be certified by an installation electrician. We have developed a new online application process that is currently being tested, and the target is to launch the online system next month. Just to share some information, City of Cape Town launched their online system 2 days ago. And here the applications are done online, and upon submission of mandatory information, permission to install small-scale embedded generation plants is granted like almost immediately. So if the applicant or the consultant supplies the necessary information, there will be no delay in obtaining approval. And that's the system we've designed, similar to the Cape Town system, and hopefully once completion of the testing is done, we can then launch that in a month's time. Right, then the high voltage network. Connection to the high voltage network, what we've done at eThekwini, we didn't reinvent the wheel. We had to attend a series of training courses, and it was quite a learning process. But in terms of the high voltage embedded generation assessment process, all applications for connection to eThekwini grid shall be assessed as per a guide for municipalities on processing embedded generator applications for 1 megawatt and greater. So this guide was developed under the Municipal Embedded Generation Support Program by the main partners being SALGA, GIZ, AMEU, and DMRE. So this guide is readily available for use by all municipalities countrywide, and potential generators. So the generator has to submit application on a prescribed application form for embedded generation or generators greater than 1 megawatt. And the category B, 2, and C generators will have to prove compliance to quality of supply codes within 6 months of commissioning, and then thereafter at 6 yearly intervals. So I've just included a slide which gives an overview of the Sustainable Energy Africa Guide. And so all the information is on the guide. It's not the intention to share what's in the guide, but just to communicate to industry stakeholders that there's an abundance of information on how to go about applying for embedded generators that are rated greater than 1 megawatts. So I would recommend that you refer to this guide if you intend applying to install embedded generation of that capacity. And once again, it's just a little bit more detail of what's in the document. It's an extremely comprehensive document. It basically gives you the A to Z, and you can't go wrong if you follow the guide. Just some extracts also from the guide, and this is the connection form. The form was also designed by the Sustainable Energy Africa. We've just adopted the form, and we've put in our logo, and then this form is available also for potential applicants. Okay, I just share a slide on the overview of the primary high voltage grid at eThekwini. So our main supply points from Eskom on the north is Avon. So Avon to Ottawa is a 275 kV. So that's a transmission level now. So we own the Ottawa substation, which is a 275 kV intake voltage. Step down to 132 kV, and then thereafter that's distributed at 132,000 volts. So there is a link between Ottawa and our Durban North substation, which is located in Springfield. There is a 275 kV link. And the other supply points are at Klaarwater. It's one of the major intake points for the city. Almost 65% of our capacity comes through the Klaarwater substation, which is supplied from 2 substations upstream at Eskom, one being Hector and the other Georgedale. And on the south side, we've got 2 substations, being Lotus Park and Durban South substation. And then those are fed from Ilovo substation. So let's see, new connection points. Okay, so for new connection points, it's dependent on the availability of spare bays at the high voltage substation. So if we've got an IPP that's interested in connecting to our high voltage network, we've got to have a spare bay, or we've got to have space to construct a new bay. And the other important aspect is you've got to have a route to convey that power from your generation site to our substation. So a high-level assessment of eThekwini sites, that's the 275 kV sites that I shared in the earlier slide, show that the Ottawa site is most suitable, and then followed by the Klaarwater site for embedded generation in the order of 100 megawatt plus. And this is a space where I would say most of the IPPs would operate in. The other sites have got the evacuation capacity, but the challenge is they're located in fairly developed areas of the city. So securing the servitudes to get the power from the generation side to the transmission substations may pose a challenge. Okay, on this slide, I've just, at a very high level, would like to share the capacity that we can evacuate at the various transmission substations. So if one looks at Klaarwater, we're looking at roughly 623 megawatts that can be evacuated safely. And then Ottawa, we've got 388, Durban North and Durban South 320, followed by 575. We've also got Lotus Park. It's also in the order of 320 that one could easily accommodate Right, just to share with you all some of the history, we have processed applications. One was rated at 11 megawatts and the second one at 7.3 megawatts. We've got in hand at the moment a 34 megawatt application that we are busy with, and that's for solar PV, and the second one rated at 3.6 megawatts. So at this moment in time, we lead all other municipalities in terms of the actual size of plant. So the 7.3 was the largest that was approved by a municipality outside of Eskom. Remember, Eskom have got years and years of experience. So this was the first project that we handled at 7.3 megawatts, and we have successfully completed that. So there was a fair amount of training, support, and coaching that we received from Sustainable Energy Africa to assess and process these applications. And yeah, as a eThekwini, we are grateful to their team and for their assistance and support, and also to GIZ and all the partners that funded and enabled Sustainable Energy Africa to develop the guidelines and the various training sessions that we have attended. So the electrical industry technical training was designed for one-way flow of electricity from Eskom to the various load centers. Now, with the introduction of and the growth in decentralized generation, there is a need for ensuring that there is safe two-way flow of electricity. So I look forward to all the new recruits and training programs to help with this task. I think that's my last slide. Thank you. So if there's any questions, I'm willing to take them.
Thanks very much, Naveen. Before we take some questions, Naveen's also given us a sense of how ready we are, but also I think the issue here is because we've got, I think the way you presented it is that the municipal officials are getting empowered, but I think the point that was made earlier, how do we ensure that the youth, our councillors, and the industry that's going to be our partners, how do they also be empowered and capacitated to be on the same page, so to speak? So I think we'll need to address those issues so that, but even within the electricity department and the energy office, we need to make sure we have succession planning, that it's not only one person that's trained, that when that person retires, that there's a constant pool of skills. So are there any questions to Naveen? Can we get the mic, roving mic again? Mr. Dube, the gentleman with the orange shirt, and Mr. Mbata again. Okay, we'll start here with Mr. Mbata because he's in the front, with the white shirt. And we'll go to Mr. Dube and the gentleman with the orange shirt behind Mr. Dube. Okay, please proceed, Mr. Mbata. Just to test if it's on there. It's on, try now.
Okay, thank you. Just a short, quick one. When it comes to the South Basin, the one that Mr. Nchalinchele was talking about helping to re-industrialize, how much can be evacuated from the old engine refinery, for instance? The capacities you gave, I wasn't sure whether that is the maximum or is that, the capacity of whatever. Using that as an example.
No, thank you for the question. I think the old engine refinery site is currently connected to our high voltage network at 132 kV. So the rating of those cables is 100 MVA. So we could safely evacuate. If they decide to generate on that site 100 MVA, we will be able to evacuate that to the upstream then would be Durban South Substation, which is 275 to 132 kV.
Thank you. Mr. Dube?
Thank you, Nevan. Just a quick question, because I saw your process there, but I couldn't read it. I just want to find out, the approach that we are taking, it is mesh-based, right? So we're looking at rolling out off-grid solar systems. So at mass scale. In terms of that, do we have to follow that process, or like the solar panels, the inverters, as well as the batteries that we'll be bringing to roll out that project? Is there a way that you can work with the city so that we can do all the processes that are required, whether it's approvals and so on? Sorry, I'm not technical myself, so I won't ask it as a technical question. But is there a process that we don't have to keep on coming back to you, but we can just at once bring everything to say, okay, this is the type of technology that we are bringing, whether we bring it in terms of import or whether we decide to manufacture locally, so that we can do that approval process and it's streamlined. And I heard that you're going also what as Cape Town did about 2 days ago in terms of the online system, but it looks like it's for the installers. Right, but if it's merit-based by one supplier, like in our case, on what we're trying to do, is there an approach or a process that is in place that you can follow that will make it easy or it's streamlined for us to make it easy so that we can do our rollout? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. I think in terms of the approval process for the small scale embedded generation, that's the one we're automating. It's going to be fairly simple because the key information that we would be looking for is the design that is signed off by a professional engineer, and then submission of documentation on your inverter that it is compliant to that NRS 097-2 standard. So upon receipt of the design and the proof that the components that you are using is certified, then we can automatically, the system then automatically grant you approval to install. Upon installation, then you would need a certified electrician to check that installation. And then once he signs off in terms of the 10142 code, then you can proceed with switching on that plant. So that's the actual small-scale embedded generation process. But if you are looking to supply inverters, say, then that inverter would have to be, if you're sourcing it overseas, you would have to get it type tested and make sure that in terms of the grid code compliance, that it meets the minimum requirements for frequency response, flicker. There's a whole lot of aspects in terms of quality of supply that component would have to be tested for and certified. But once you get the certification, then you can sell hundreds of those inverters in this country because we've got the assurance in that it was type tested. So I think your question was twofold. One was you probably supplying components versus installation. So I hope I covered.
Thank you. We are basically integrating, right? So we use our own technology, basically. So what I'm saying is that our approach is vertical integration, right? We manufacture or import our own technology that we will be rolling out to market, right? For both off-grid and microgrids in the market that we're going for. So for us, we're looking for a simpler process that we don't have to keep on coming back to the city. We can come to the city once, work with the city, even before we start with the project. Right? And we know exactly, step by step, what are the checkboxes that needs to be checked so that it makes it seamless in terms of our rollout. Thank you.
I think Mr. Dube is also trying to help us here. So, Mr. Dube, what I think we should do is let's engage further on that issue, because I think you're also issuing a challenge to us to really make the process less bureaucratic and cumbersome. How can the private sector be a little bit more flexible and proactive? I think that's so, but I think let's not dwell on it. I think we need to keep that on the agenda, Sbu, that the private sector must be close to us, but we also must, as a principle, try and find a way for the private sector to be a little bit more closer to us and more proactive and give them the room to do that. I think that's what we're saying. The gentleman with the orange shirt there.
Hi, thank you. It's Melusi from Equality. I deal with industries a lot, and I'm just curious in terms of those two IPPs that you awarded, the 11 and the 34. Is it industry? Because some of the industry in the north and the south, where paper mill and a sugar refinery, has spoken about that they have extra capacity at times and they would like to sell back to the grid, but they had issues with PPAs. Is that on the pipeline for taking that extra capacity from industry?
The two applications I referred to was our existing customers that are generating. So it was an existing customer that did an installation, and we did the studies and we've checked compliance to the grid code. So it was just merely sharing the projects that we handled that was greater than 1 megawatts, which is very different from the process that one follows for the small scale embedded generation.
But I think the question of the sugar mills, you were also asking a question about that. Can they be?
I just need to check the location of the sugar mills. If it's in our licensed area of supply, we can do the assessment and assist. But if it's in the Eskom area of supply, then they'd have to go, or Kwaduguza, I'm not sure where they're located. But if it's in the eThekwini, we would more gladly look at the application.
Yeah, they both in the eThekwini, but I think the one in the south, the paper mill, is in an Eskom area. Thanks.
Okay, Sbu, do you want to respond to that as well?
Yeah, thanks very much, Eric, for that. I think also part of the question was around whether the municipality will be keen to be the off-taker of that power through a well-structured power purchase agreement. And I think it's something that it can be done, but most importantly, one of the biggest issues that we are facing is around the duration. You know, if I buy electricity from you, for how long? If we are to contract for 3 years, we do know that there are limitations with regards to MFMA, but it's something that has just been recently resolved by National Treasury. I do know that there are recent amendments to the municipal public-private partnership regulations. So the issue of 3 years on the MFMA is no longer an issue. And that is why, as a eThekwini, we are now procuring that 400 megawatts, you know, with those, obviously, PPP regulations that has been amended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Naveen. But ladies and gentlemen, just to say that Naveen and the team at Electricity works very closely with SBU. And we encourage them to make sure that they are properly aligned, because that alignment has actually enabled us to get the partnership with GIZ and with the entity that was helping with the capacitation. So ladies and gentlemen, we have completed our work for today. We have been inspired by the young people in the morning. We also now understand the role of the SETAs and how we can bring more young people, because they are our future, particularly in the energy sector, given the fact that our energy security is a challenge. Our mayor gave us our marching orders, but also explained what's happening in the city. I know the mayor spoke a lot about how we're getting the infrastructure back to where it should be. But I do think on the electricity side, much more work needs to be done. But the load shedding schedules and climate kind of impacts on the energy confidence in the city, but also it impacts on other things like water and sanitation. When there's no power, our pump stations go down. So ladies and gentlemen, and also the presentations from Mr. Karan and from Mr. Mchali, from Naveen, and the people that gave us the content. So we give our commitment that all of you that are participating in here, we will make sure that you get an update from this meeting. So, because, I mean, the stuff that SBU gave us, I think it's, because it also helps you plan your own company or entity that you're from, how you're going to participate and engage and be a potential beneficiary of those things coming forward. Going forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know that we should have had lunch and then did a closing, but I'm kind of a good school principal. I want to allow you to go home early or go back to your desk. But really, on behalf of this, and I'd really like to emphasize that even the mayor, he wasn't here with us all the time, but he is really committed to this independent power producing plan, our climate change plan, and really making sure that we can not to break our reliance on ESCOM and get the independent power producing plan working and the young people participating. And our city manager is with the mayor next door. Now, I don't want to go and drag them to come and do a vote of thanks here, which I don't think is critical. But I just want to say on behalf of those two leaders, because he's the city manager, the head of the administration, and he gives SBU and Mr. Mpewa and that energy office 100% support. I mean, and the electricity colleagues working with the mayor. I think we've got 110% support, because the mayor is also participating in a lot of international platforms that support even our partnership, GIZ, and other international partners to gain that knowledge, because it's really about sharing good practice. And as Naveen said, don't reinvent the wheel. You know, other cities around the world, whether they, I mean, like the DA run Cape Town, that's not a critical issue. What can we learn from Cape Town, from Johannesburg, from other cities around the world? Because that makes us better. Because this, I mean, I also feel that we as citizens also, we can't rely on the Metro Police and SAPS to always be responsible. I know that we have a lot of poverty in our city. Our infrastructure, our electricity infrastructure and our water infrastructure is, besides the maintenance and repair strategies that we are putting in place, that a lot of them are working, some of them are being frustrated, right, by constant vandalization, by people that take some of the scrap, the metal out of there and sell it to scrap metal dealers in the city that turn around and complain that the lights are off. But they buy the copper and the metal from these people. So it's like, and then we also have a very small minority of some of our officials and some people in the private sector who collaborate with criminals to sabotage our infrastructure so that they can get the work on the site or to make us look bad, right? I'm saying it's a minority, but it's there. And those same people want to complain that the lights are off, the water is not coming through, right? So I'm saying we need to develop a different kind of patriotism and loyalty to our country. That water and that infrastructure does not belong to the mayor. It doesn't belong to SBU. It belongs to all of us. We need to find ways of protecting. We need to make sure that all the paras that are vandalizing, they must be given jobs, they must be given protection or the bean shelters or whatever, so they don't need to damage our infrastructure. But also, we need to arrest those scrap metal dealers. Because the chain is, a person steals the scrap, they sell it to a scrap metal dealer, who sometimes might live in Durban North or Mount Edgecombe or wherever, sorry about the North, but wherever. And that person sells it to an international, multinational company, mainly in China and India, and they sell it back to us as a cell phone. It's really mad. We're literally buying back things that were stolen from us, right? I'm not saying that it's in all cases, but we've got to stop that culture. And we've got to I know that we can't all be impimpies, but we must report people, because they are damaging the infrastructure that's creating a security threat to all of us and a health threat, and it's destroying jobs for our own people. So that is the kind of mindset, I think, that will even help the security, the independent power producers plan to be effective. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, on behalf of the city and on behalf of our energy office, our city manager, our mayor, really like to thank you for coming. And I always say, no, because I'm Mkongi and I like to manage relationships, we in eThekwini don't believe in one-night stands. You hear? And there's no free lunch, right? We're going to give you lunch now, but we want you to be working with the energy office. And if they're not giving you the information, we must making sure you get the information from this workshop. But also, for all of you, make sure you're on the city's database, right? Our procurement database and SCM, and the National Treasury database. Because we would also make sure, SBU, I'm sure, that once you're on that system, you automatically get the updates and the information on the rollout, what SBU spoke about, all those big contracts that are coming forward, right? But also very importantly, you know, I do a lot of international relations. A lot of international investors come here, right? I don't think we must stop them. They're important, and we must work with them and empower them to come and do business. But what we need to make sure, in other parts of the world, is that they do business and they help local companies and local business to be partners in that investment, right? And also, the idea of saying BEE, I just want a share and I'm not prepared to work, and I just want you to give me like some money on the side and I'll go and sit at home, that is defeating black economic empowerment. If you don't know how to do the job, you'll always be a beggar of 30%. And my attitude is we should have a situation in our country where that 30% becomes 70%. Without fighting, it can be a natural process. Because 70% of our population are black people, right? And we must take ownership of the economy in a managed way. And we don't need violence. That's the most important thing, you know? Okay, so I'm sounding like an umfundis here now. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for your attention. It is now, what is the time? My watch stopped. I don't know why it stopped. 1:30. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, just some final housekeeping. Remember, if you have a parking ticket, please, Lungi, is Lungi there? There she at the back with the parking tickets for you to get out of the building after lunch. And please enjoy the lunch, and I hope to see you at the next briefing and accountability session. Thank you very much for your attention, ladies and gentlemen.